My wife started cheating on me with an old friend. When I found out about it, I hired a detective and confirmed my suspicions. I shamed her in front of her colleagues, and her career was ruined. I always thought Lisa and I had the perfect marriage. We had been together for almost 10 years, and everything seemed great. Actually, better than great. We shared the same interests, were building a life together, and I genuinely thought she was happy. But recently, things started to feel off. You know when you can sense something is just not right? That's how it was with her. She became distant, distracted, and I could feel her slowly pulling away. Family dinners? She started declining. Plans with friends? Canceled. She said it was because of work, but I wasn't sure. At first, I tried to explain it away. Work stress, maybe something happening at her job. But the more I noticed, the more I couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper was going on. The first red flag came when I found an old letter she kept. It wasn't dramatic, just a few lines about an old friend. Weird, sure, but everyone keeps little things from their past, right? It stuck with me, though. Who was this friend? Why hadn't I heard about him in the 10 years we'd been together? That's when the distance between us really started to show. She wasn't the same Lisa anymore. We used to talk, really talk, about everything. Our plans, dreams, and how we'd build our life together. Now, it felt like I was talking to a stranger. The late nights at work became more frequent, and even when we were together, she barely looked at me. The excuses she made just didn't add up anymore. Then came the receipts. Expensive dinners at restaurants we'd never been to together. These weren't casual meals. They were fancy dinners at places far out of the way. I remember staring at one of those receipts and thinking, who the hell is she having dinner with? When I asked her about it, she brushed it off as work-related. But who has work dinners like that multiple nights a week? I decided I couldn't sit back and wonder anymore. I needed answers. I wasn't ready to confront her, not without proof. So, I did something I never thought I'd do. I installed a GPS tracker in her car. I felt sick doing it, like I was betraying her, but I had to know. I also slipped some software onto her phone. I felt even worse about that, but at this point, I couldn't just sit there while she was off, who knows where, with who knows who. That's when I found out about the hotel. Every couple of weeks, she was heading to a hotel on the outskirts of town. She'd stay there for a couple of hours, and then head back home like nothing had happened. Like everything was completely normal. It all started making sense. Her strange behavior, the canceled plans, her cold attitude toward me. It was like a puzzle coming together in the worst possible way. I started to notice even more. Little things I'd previously brushed off suddenly seemed significant. One night, we were out with friends, and someone made a joke about old relationships. Lisa froze. I mean, completely froze, then changed the subject so fast that everyone noticed. It was strange, but at the time, I didn't think much of it. Now, looking back, I couldn't let it go. Then, the anonymous call started. I'd get these creepy messages from blocked numbers saying things like, "You don't know the truth about your wife," or "She's living a double life." At first, I thought it was some kind of prank, but after everything else, it felt all too real. It was like my whole life was unraveling right in front of me, and I was powerless to stop it. I felt like a stranger in my own marriage, unsure of who I was even married to anymore. Then came the final nail in the coffin, an encounter with one of Lisa's old acquaintances, someone she'd never mentioned to me before. We bumped into him at the grocery store. At first, it was casual small talk, but as he kept talking, things weren't adding up. He mentioned places she'd been, people she knew, things that didn't align with the stories she had told me about her past. That's when I realized something was seriously wrong. I couldn't let it go. I had to know more, so I dug deeper. I went through her phone, reading every message she had sent. I felt horrible, like I was invading her privacy, but I needed answers, and I found them. The messages were coded, like she was trying to cover her tracks. But it didn't take long to figure out what was really going on. There was this guy, her old friend. The messages between them were more than friendly. They talked about meeting up, about places they used to go. And that's when it hit me. Everything she had told me about her past was a lie. This guy wasn't just some friend. He was someone significant. Someone from her past who clearly still meant a lot to her. It wasn't just about her cheating anymore. It was about the fact that I didn't really know who my wife was. 10 years of my life suddenly felt like a lie. The worst part was the way she referred to him. She called him her old friend, but the way they talked to each other, it was like I was reading some sappy romance novel. There was a history there, something deep, something she'd never shared with me. I couldn't handle this on my own anymore. I needed solid proof before I confronted her. So, I did what anyone would do in my situation. I hired a private investigator. The guy I hired, Dave, was a pro. He didn't ask too many questions. He just wanted the basics, her schedule, the hotel visits, everything I had found so far. Then I waited. That's when the paranoia really kicked in. Every time Lisa left the house, I wondered if this would be the day I found out the truth. Every night she came home late, I watched her, trying to figure out if she was lying to me. I felt like I was losing my mind. It didn't take Dave long to start sending me updates. And trust me, the things he found rocked me to my core. Turns out, Lisa's old friend wasn't just someone from her past. He was her ex-husband. The same guy she told me she had left years ago, saying he was a bad influence and that she wanted nothing to do with him. That was just another lie. They had been in contact for who knows how long, meeting up behind my back like nothing had ever changed between them. She even traveled to see him under the guise of work trips. I felt sick, but it didn't stop there. Dave sent me photos, pictures of her with him, and they weren't just having casual meetings. We're talking romantic dinners, hand-holding, kissing in public. And there were videos too, ones that made it clear they weren't just meeting up for coffee. To top it all off, Dave found evidence that Lisa wasn't just seeing her ex. There were other men too. Other hotel meetings. I was absolutely crushed. It was like every corner I turned, there was more dirt waiting for me. I remember sitting at the table, staring at the stack of evidence Dave had gathered. Photos, videos, text messages, all the proof I needed that my wife was living a double life. It felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. Who was this woman? Was anything she ever told me true? The worst part was that I couldn't tell anyone. Not yet. I had to figure out my next move. But the weight of it was crushing me. I had friends, our friends, who had no idea what I was going through. We'd hang out, and they'd crack jokes about relationships and infidelity, completely unaware that I was living it. Lisa would sit there, laughing along, acting like everything was fine, and I was just gritting my teeth, trying not to lose it. One day, we were at a barbecue, and one of my friends made a joke about how all wives have their secrets. It was lighthearted, but it hit me like a punch to the gut. Lisa was sitting there, sipping her drink, smiling, pretending like she wasn't sneaking off to hotels with her ex and God knows who else. I wanted to scream at her right then and there. I wanted to tear apart the perfect little facade she had built in front of everyone. But I didn't. I played it cool, smiled through the pain. Nobody knew what was really going on. After that, I couldn't handle being around my friends anymore. I started avoiding them, distancing myself because I couldn't stand the idea of lying to them like Lisa was lying to me. I felt like I was being suffocated by the secrets, by the betrayal, and I didn't know how to stop it. Dave kept digging, and the more he found, the angrier I got. I couldn't stop thinking about how I was going to make her pay, but I wasn't going to do it right away. No, this wasn't the time to explode. I had to play it smart, just like she had. She thought she was clever, thought she was getting away with it, but she had no idea what was coming. Confronting her would have been too easy. I didn't just want her to admit what she had done. That would have been letting her off the hook. I needed her to feel the weight of her actions. Her career, her reputation, everything she had built. I wanted it all to come crashing down around her, just like she had destroyed everything we had built together. I wasn't in a rush. I was going to take my time. The first step was getting my affairs in order. Literally, divorce was inevitable, but I wasn't going to let her walk away with anything. I contacted a lawyer, someone who knew how to handle situations like mine. We didn't just talk about splitting assets. We talked strategy. The first thing my lawyer told me was to gather everything. Emails, messages, photos, videos. Anything that would show the court just how deceitful she had been. It wasn't just about the cheating anymore. It was about ensuring she paid for everything she had done. And then there was Emily. Now, I'll be honest, she wasn't part of the plan at first. She was a colleague, someone I'd worked with from time to time. Young, attractive, sure, but I hadn't paid much attention to her before. That changed when she started flirting with me. Little compliments here and there, lingering glances. It didn't take long for me to realize she was interested. After everything Lisa had done to me, I wasn't about to turn down that kind of attention. I needed a distraction, and Emily was perfect for that. But more than that, I could use her. At first, our meetings were purely professional, grabbing lunch during work, having coffee between meetings. But it didn't take long for things to shift. I started looking forward to seeing her, the way she'd laugh at my jokes, the way she'd touch my arm when we talked. I knew exactly where this was heading, and I let it happen. It wasn't like I was emotionally involved. How could I be after what Lisa had done to me? No, Emily was just another piece of the puzzle, another tool in my plan. The first time we hooked up, I made sure to record it. Every kiss, every whisper, every moment. It wasn't about the sex, although, I'll admit, it felt good to have someone who actually wanted to be around me. But I wasn't stupid. I knew this was just another weapon I could use if I needed to. Emily and I kept meeting up, but it wasn't just casual anymore. She was getting emotionally invested, which wasn't part of the plan. At first, I didn't mind. She was fun to be around, and it was a nice distraction from the disaster my marriage had become. But as things with her started getting deeper, I realized I had to be careful. I couldn't afford to lose focus on what I really needed to do, bring Lisa down. Emily would ask me about my situation, about Lisa, and if I was ready to move on. I'd lie, of course, telling her what she wanted to hear. I'd say, of course I'm ready, even though deep down, I knew I wasn't done with Lisa. Not by a long shot. I wasn't about to let go of my revenge. Not yet. There was too much at stake. While things with Emily grew more complicated, I was still laying the groundwork for Lisa's downfall. I'd already started planting subtle rumors about her at work. I didn't need to do much, just a few whispers here and there. People love gossip, especially when it's about someone who's been climbing the corporate ladder as quickly as Lisa. All I had to do was give them a little nudge in the right direction, and their imaginations did the rest. It started small, questions about her personal life, rumors about her taking long trips away from work, even whispers about how she seemed distracted lately. Before long, it wasn't just rumors. People at her job were starting to talk, wondering if she was as focused and dedicated as she used to be. It didn't take much to get the ball rolling, and once it started, it was impossible to stop. I even forged a few documents. Nothing too crazy, just enough to make it look like Lisa was mismanaging things at work. I knew a few people in her professional circle who didn't like her, so I made sure they had the right information at their disposal. The cracks in her professional reputation were starting to show, and Lisa had no idea I was behind it all. She still came home pretending like everything was fine. She had no clue that her career was on the rocks, that people were questioning her integrity, her ability to lead. I sat back and watched as everything slowly unraveled, biding my time. But I wasn't done yet. Not even close. Lisa was starting to feel the pressure at work, though. I could see it in the way she acted when she came home. She'd complain about her colleagues being distant, about people questioning her decisions. She couldn't figure out why everything was suddenly falling apart. And I just sat there, nodding along, pretending to be the supportive husband while knowing damn well I was the one pulling the strings behind the scenes. She started to get paranoid, too. One night, we were having dinner, and out of nowhere, she asked me, "Do you think people at work are talking about me? I just feel like something's off." I shrugged and said, "I'm sure it's nothing. You're probably just stressed." I had to bite my tongue to keep from smiling. She didn't know what was coming. And honestly, neither did Emily. She was starting to catch on that something was off between us. I was still seeing her regularly, but she could feel the distance growing. She'd ask me things like, "Are you sure you're ready to move on?" Or, "Is this really what you want?" I'd brush her off, tell her what she wanted to hear, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. She was starting to realize that I had other motives, but I wasn't ready to give her up. Not yet. Emily was still useful to me, and I wasn't about to lose control of the situation now. As the weeks went by, Lisa's professional reputation continued to take hit after hit. The rumors I had started were spreading like wildfire. Clients were questioning her integrity. Colleagues were distancing themselves from her. And the best part? She had no idea that I was behind it all. She still thought she was in control, still thought she could keep her secrets safe. But that was all about to change. The day of the big corporate event arrived. It was one of those swanky dinners where everyone who mattered in Lisa's professional circle would be there. Her bosses, her colleagues, her rivals. It was the perfect stage for her downfall. I had planned everything meticulously. I made sure the evidence of her affair with her ex-husband landed in the hands of exactly the right person, one of her biggest professional rivals. It was almost too easy. I dropped some anonymous hints, shared a few carefully timed photos that couldn't be explained away, and within days, the rumor mill was in full swing. By the time the event rolled around, the whispers were already spreading. Lisa, of course, was clueless. She walked into the event like nothing was wrong, still thinking she had everything under control. She smiled, shook hands, and tried to work the room like she always did. But the atmosphere had shifted. People were watching her, whispering behind her back. She could feel it, I could tell, but she didn't know why. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. One of her colleagues, someone who used to be on her side, cornered her. I couldn't hear what was said, but I could see it all unfold from across the room. The way Lisa's face fell, the way she tried to compose herself, but couldn't hide the panic. The look of judgment and disdain on her colleague's face. It was priceless. She was rattled, no doubt about it. She tried to pull me aside, her voice shaky as she whispered, "Something's wrong. People are acting weird. Do you think someone's spreading rumors about me?" I played dumb, shrugged, and said, "I'm sure it's nothing." But I knew better. I knew exactly what was happening, because I had orchestrated the whole thing. That night, Lisa was a wreck. The event had gone from a chance for her to shine to a complete disaster. She tried to keep her composure, but I could see the cracks forming. The whispers had reached everyone. Her perfect little image was falling apart, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. After that night, things spiraled even faster. Word spread, and before long, her professional reputation was in tatters. She started losing clients, her colleagues stopped returning her calls, and she was being left out of important meetings. She was scrambling, trying to figure out why everything was going wrong, but it was too late. The damage had been done. She came home one night, visibly upset. "I don't understand what's happening," she said, her voice trembling. "It's like everyone's turning against me. I don't know what to do." I just nodded, pretending to be sympathetic, but inside, I was reveling in her downfall. This was exactly what I wanted. I had taken everything from her, her career, her reputation, everything she had worked for, and she didn't even know it was me. But I wasn't done yet. The final blow came during the divorce proceedings. We had already been working with the lawyers for a while, but this was the day we were going to sit down and finalize the terms. Lisa walked into the meeting room, still holding on to the last shred of her confidence. She was dressed in her usual professional attire, trying to maintain the appearance of control, but I could tell she was on edge. Her lawyer was there, looking smug, like he thought he was going to get her a good deal. Little did he know what I had in store. I slid the folder across the table. Photos, texts, emails, everything I had collected that tied her to her ex-husband and the string of other men she had been sneaking around with. I didn't say a word at first. I just watched her face as she opened the folder and started flipping through the evidence. Her hands started shaking. "Where did you get this?" she hissed, her voice low but filled with panic. I leaned back, crossing my arms. "Did you really think I wouldn't find out, Lisa? You've been lying to me for years. You didn't just cheat. You lied about your entire life. And now it's all out in the open." Her lawyer tried to keep his composure, but even he looked rattled. "We can discuss this privately," he said, already scrambling to figure out how they were going to salvage the situation. But I wasn't done. "Oh, I'm not interested in keeping this private," I said, my voice steady. "In fact, I think it's time we bring this all out into the light. I'm tired of the lies, and I'm done playing nice." Lisa's face went pale. She knew what was coming, the final blow, the one she wouldn't recover from. I had arranged for the evidence to leak just before another big corporate event, the kind where everyone who mattered would be present. By the time she showed up, the truth would be out there for everyone to see. And it played out exactly as I had planned. When Lisa walked into the room that evening, I could feel the shift in energy. People stared, whispered, and started moving away from her like she was toxic. She still didn't know what had happened. She tried to make her usual rounds, smiling, pretending everything was normal. But then the questions started. It was subtle at first, small talk about her personal life, questions she couldn't dodge. But then someone came out and said it outright. "So, how's your ex-husband doing? Still meeting up with him?" Lisa's face fell. She tried to laugh it off, but it was too late. The room had already turned against her. She stumbled through a weak excuse, but no one believed her. It was over. Right there, in front of everyone, Lisa broke down. She tried to justify herself, blaming me, blaming the pressure of her job, even blaming our marriage. But the more she talked, the worse it got. The people who used to hang on her every word, who had admired her, turned their backs on her. Her perfect little world had crumbled, and there was no putting it back together. After that night, the divorce proceedings moved quickly. Lisa knew she had lost. She tried to push back during negotiations, but it was no use. I had all the leverage. I made sure she lost a significant portion of our assets, everything she had worked for. The life we had built together was shattered, and she had nothing left. We met again with the lawyers to finalize the terms. Lisa sat across from me, looking like a shadow of the woman she used to be. Her lawyer was doing his best to salvage something for her, but there wasn't much he could do. The evidence was overwhelming. The affairs, the lies, the money she had spent on her secret trips, all of it was laid out in black and white. Lisa tried to make eye contact with me a few times, probably thinking she could talk her way out of this like she always had. But I was done. I didn't say much, just nodded along as my lawyer tore apart every argument her side tried to make. By the end of the meeting, it was clear. She was screwed. After the papers were signed, Lisa tried one last time to reach out. "Please, can we talk?" she begged. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen. We can fix this." I didn't even bother looking at her. "There's nothing left to talk about, Lisa. You made your choices, and now you're going to live with them." And that was it. I walked out, leaving her to deal with the wreckage of her life. After the divorce was finalized, I finally felt a sense of freedom, a weight lifted off my chest. The months of scheming, digging, planning, and executing my revenge had left me exhausted, but the satisfaction was undeniable. I had walked away with most of our assets, and Lisa? She had nothing. Her career was in ruins, her reputation was shattered, and the colleagues who had once admired her had turned their backs on her. Even her so-called lover didn't want to be associated with her anymore. She had nothing left, and for the first time in years, I wasn't looking back. What surprised me wasn't just the satisfaction of seeing Lisa's life crumble. It was the realization that I could finally close that chapter of my life for good. Lisa had been a toxic weight around my neck for years, and now, with her gone, I could focus on something new, something real. That's when things with Emily started to change. What began as a tool in my revenge plan had turned into something much more meaningful. Emily and I had been seeing each other for months, and at first, I'll admit, it was all about getting back at Lisa. But somewhere along the way, it stopped being about her. Emily became more than just a fling. I found myself looking forward to our time together, not just for the physical connection, but for the emotional one too. Emily was different, kind, understanding, and completely different from the cold, distant version of Lisa I had been dealing with for years. At first, I kept my guard up. After everything I had been through with Lisa, I wasn't about to throw myself into another relationship blindly. I was careful, cautious. Emily would ask me about my past, about what I wanted for the future, and for once, I didn't have all the answers. But I knew one thing. I was tired of living in the past. I didn't want to be consumed by revenge anymore. I wanted something real, something that wasn't built on lies and manipulation. As the weeks turned into months, Emily and I grew closer. We started talking about the future, about starting fresh, leaving behind the mess that had been my life with Lisa. Eventually, we made the decision to move out of the city. It wasn't a huge move, but it was enough to feel like a fresh start. We found a new place, nothing too flashy, but it felt like home. A place where we could begin again, without the shadow of my past hanging over us. I even started thinking about opening a business with Emily. She was sharp, business-minded, and together, we had a lot of potential. It wasn't just about building something professionally. It was about building something together. For the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. I wasn't consumed by anger or plotting revenge anymore. I was focused on the future. Meanwhile, Lisa was spiraling. Word had gotten back to me that she had left the city, trying to start over somewhere new, but her reputation had followed her. Every time she tried to land a new job, her past would catch up with her. No one wanted to hire someone who had been publicly exposed for the kind of betrayal she had committed. Even her family, who had always been in her corner, started to distance themselves from her. They couldn't overlook the lies, the affairs, the mess she had made of her life. A few months after the divorce was finalized, Lisa tried to reach out to me. I don't know what she was expecting. Maybe she thought I'd feel guilty for what had happened to her. Maybe she thought I'd help her. But when I saw her name pop up on my phone, I didn't even hesitate. I ignored her call. She left me a dozen messages after that, but I never responded. She had made her choices, and now she was living with the consequences. I didn't know her anything. I heard through the grapevine that Lisa had fallen into a deep depression, that she was struggling to keep her life together with no job, no friends, and no one to turn to. There was a time when I might have felt bad for her, might have considered reaching out to help, but not anymore. Lisa wasn't my problem anymore. One evening, Emily and I met up with some old friends, people who had known Lisa and me before everything had gone down. They hadn't seen me in a while, and when they did, they were shocked. "You look like a new man," one of them said. "I can't believe how much has changed." And they were right. I wasn't the same person I had been when this whole thing started. I wasn't the bitter, angry guy who was obsessed with revenge. I had changed. I had grown. Lisa was a part of my past, but she didn't define my future anymore. As the night went on, the conversation inevitably turned to Lisa. One of my friends asked how she was doing, and I shrugged. "I don't really know," I said. "I don't keep up with her anymore." They were surprised, of course. They expected me to care, to have some lingering feelings about her downfall, but I didn't. Lisa's life was her own mess to deal with, and I had moved on. For the first time in years, I felt free. As Emily and I left the bar that night, hand in hand, I realized just how far I had come. My life had been torn apart, but I had rebuilt it. And now, I was ready for whatever came next. Lisa was just a memory, a reminder of who I used to be and how far I had come. In the months that followed, Emily and I continued to build our life together. We opened a small business, a cafe that quickly became a hit in our new town. It wasn't anything extravagant, but it was ours, something we had built from the ground up. I never imagined I'd find happiness like this again after everything that had happened, but there it was. I had a new life, new goals, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. Occasionally, I'd still hear bits and pieces about Lisa. Apparently, she had tried to move to another city, but every time she started over, her past caught up with her. Her reputation was ruined beyond repair, and even though she tried to put on a brave face, it was clear that she was struggling. It was ironic, really. She had spent so many years lying, manipulating, and destroying the lives of those around her, and now she was the one who was alone, with no one left to help her pick up the pieces. I didn't feel sorry for her anymore. How could I? She had dug her own grave, and now she was lying in it. I had given her a chance to be honest, to rebuild what we had, and she had thrown it all away. That wasn't my problem anymore. As for Emily, things were getting serious. More serious than I had ever thought they would. What started as a simple fling had turned into something real. We were building a life together, one that wasn't based on lies or betrayal. We talked about the future, about marriage, kids, all the things I thought I'd never want again after what I had been through with Lisa. But with Emily, it felt different. It felt right. One evening, as we were closing up the cafe, Emily turned to me and said, "I never thought I'd see you this happy again." I smiled, pulling her into a hug. I never thought I'd be this happy again. And it was true. I had spent so long wrapped up in anger, revenge, and the wreckage of my past that I had almost forgotten what it was like to feel genuinely happy. But now, with Emily, with the life we were building together, I felt like I had finally found peace. As time went on, I stopped thinking about Lisa altogether. She became a distant memory, someone I used to know. Occasionally, I'd hear through the grapevine that she was still struggling, still trying to pick up the pieces of her life. But it didn't matter anymore. She wasn't part of my world. I had moved on, and I was happier than I had ever been. Emily and I got married the following year. It was a small, intimate ceremony, just close friends and family. Nothing extravagant, nothing flashy, just the two of us starting a new chapter in our lives together. It was everything I had ever wanted, but had never known I needed. Looking back, it's almost hard to believe how much had changed in such a short amount of time. A year ago, I had been consumed by anger, driven by revenge, obsessed with tearing Lisa down. But now, that part of my life felt like a distant memory, one I was glad to leave behind. The cafe continued to thrive, and as Emily and I settled into our new life together, I couldn't help but feel grateful. Grateful that I had gotten out of the toxic mess that was my marriage to Lisa. Grateful that I had found someone like Emily, someone who was kind, loving, and real. And grateful that I had finally learned to let go of the past. It wasn't always easy. There were moments when the anger would bubble up again. Moments when I'd think about everything Lisa had done. All the lies, all the betrayal. But then I'd look at Emily, at the life we had built together, and the anger would fade away. Lisa wasn't worth my time or energy anymore. She was part of a past I had left behind. One day, as Emily and I were sitting on the porch of our cafe, watching the sunset, she turned to me and said, "Do you ever think about her? About Lisa?" I paused, thinking for a moment before shaking my head. "Not really. She's just part of the past now." Emily nodded, leaning her head on my shoulder. "I'm glad," she said softly. "You deserve better."